All right, everybody. That's the bumper music that tells us it's time to come back to the show. It's called the Business to Business Network Show. I've been doing the show since 1999. It's an hour-long business, politics, economics. And we have a variety of different guests in each hour. And our next guests are quite a famous individual as far as I'm concerned. Paul, give us your last name. Introduce yourself.
Paul Johnson. I was born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona. I was lucky enough to grow up to become mayor when I was like 29 years old. And then after serving in that, I've been an entrepreneur here in the local market for a period of time and also very active in the open primaries.
Excellent. And John, you're on the phone with us. Give us your last name. Introduce yourself, please.
I'm John Opdycke. I live in Chicago, Illinois. I've been the founder and president of Open Primaries, which is a national advocacy and education group since 2009.
Excellent. Paul, give us a little bit of the history, especially here in Arizona, for Open Primaries. Tell us what you worked on.
Sure. So we put an item on the ballot last year. We ended up getting about 1.5 million votes, which was about 250,000 short of what we needed, or 300,000 short of what we needed. We're about 40% of the actual vote. We've seen an increase of that, mainly coming because of the idea that so many people are registering as independents today. Independents are unaffiliated voters. Now, if I were to give you, kind of my history in it, it really all started when I ran for office the first time. I was like 24 years old. I remember I was 24 years old. I was a registered Democrat. I was running in a 2 or 3 to 1 Republican district, but it was a city election. It was nonpartisan. And I had this hat that said Reagan-Johnson Leadership for Arizona, which had everybody like mad at me. And at one point, somebody in the media said, well, Ronald Reagan doesn't endorse you. I said, well, no, he didn't endorse me, but I endorse him, right? But the point is that for me to be able to win that district, here's how I won. I was way outspent. My opponent was even more competent than I was, but I knocked on 90,000 doors. Wow. I spoke to 26,000 people, and I know that because I put down next to their name a note about what it was that they said to me. Now, when you talk to Democrats, many of them would talk about their local school or some social issue. Republicans might also, but many of them talked about their business, about regulations or taxation or the problems with the street closing that I remember Hinkle Lighting had been affected by a street closing, right? And it wasn't all that difficult to begin to recognize that if you want to be able to pay for these social programs, you have to have a strong business community, yes. that these two things aren't binary, they're linked together. But as time went on, and I helped in different campaigns. I helped in John McCain's campaign and others. What began to become clear to me was how different it was at the legislature, and for that matter in Congress. Well, if you start to look at the numbers, you start to see why. About 75% of the people are registered to vote. Of the 75 that are registered to vote, about a third are Republican, a third are Democrat, a third are independent today. It's a little bit off, but it's close enough. Well, now you're down to about 24, 25% of the public that might vote in either primary. But the turnouts in those elections were about 30%. Mm. Well, a candidate that's going to run in that primary, they're going to get that voter list only, the high efficacy voter in that district. Yeah. I can tell you, amongst Democrats and Republicans who only vote in primaries, not Democrats and Republicans who vote in the general, right. The ones who only vote in primaries, they are much more of a grievance voter.
Yes.
Right? And here's what I can tell you their biggest grievance is. They hate the other side.
I know, that's it.
They're passionate about how much they hate the other side, how evil they think that they are. Well, a candidate who runs in that, in a district that's been gerrymandered, they then never have to go speak to an independent or an unaffiliated voter.
They don't take their calls.
That's right. And so what I began to learn, or what I began to believe, was that maybe the single greatest thing that we're having as a problem today is the inability to listen to one another, to try to understand where people who don't look like us, who don't think like us, who didn't come from the same background, to genuinely understand them and listen to them. By the way, I think your radio station has done a great job of listening to a variety of different viewpoints, and that's a beautiful thing. But that's not completely true in the media today. Yeah, in many cases in the media, like if you don't have the right liberal slant, they're not going to listen to you. And my argument is we have to find a way to engage one another. And I've been an independent for 20-some years, but it's because I believe that that is a central focus of what we have to do to preserve our Constitution, to preserve what today is the greatest society in the history of the planet. And if you don't believe that, tell me who or when.
Yeah.
When was it better or who was better?
Yeah.
We've done more to advance human progress than any other society on the planet. And we did that because a long time ago, our founders said that while we might do great things, and we did, built bridges and dams, we even put somebody on the moon, the greatest thing that we ever did is that our government put the individual over itself. It put the individual over government through the Constitution.
Yep. We the people.
Preserving that, there isn't anything more important. And right now we have these two parties that they can't even talk to one another.
Yeah. And again, that's the reason for the open primaries.
That's right.
Because you can now get the moderate independent voters to get a chance to voice themselves during the primary. John, what are you seeing nationwide in the 50 states when it comes to open primaries?
Well, Rex, there is a beehive of activity taking place all over the country, from Oregon to Florida, from Massachusetts to New Mexico. People are getting together. They're building committees. They're building organizations to put ballot referendums in front of the voters, work with the legislature to pass bills. There's active lawsuits in 5 states, and we just had one case, a federal case, go all the way to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court didn't take it, but they had some interesting things to say about the arguments that we were making. And Paul's 100% right. What's driving this conversation is the growing recognition that every week, I crunched the numbers on this, Rex. These are not made up numbers. Every week, 10,000 Americans re-register from Democrat or Republican to independent. There is a growing, it's not just numbers, there is this growing sense that the two-party system is not looking out for America. The parties are looking out for the parties. And the American people are, whether you're liberal or conservative, whether you voted for Trump or Biden or a third party, whether you're a socialist or a libertarian, the American people are being hurt and left behind because of how the rules of the game. The rules of the game don't let us come together. Mm-hmm. And that's ultimately what when I talk about open primaries, it's not some new reform, some new experiment with some new technology that we've never heard of. 85% of local cities in America use this system. This is the norm at the local level, where every voter gets the same ballot. Yep. Democrats, Republicans, and independents are all treated the same, and voters get to vote for whoever they want. It's only when you get up to the state level and the federal level that the parties have devised these ways to separate us, to silo us. Democrats can only vote for these candidates. Republicans can only vote for these candidates, and independents can't vote at all.
Yep. Until the general.
And exactly, until the general, when all the decisions have already been made.
Yeah, and you've already got
90% of elections are over.
You got a red-blue choice. And now, I am going to introduce, and I warned you guys about this, VOATZ. It's a new technology, a new smartphone app, VOATZ, where individuals can go in and register and trust. By the way, that's the key, too. They need to know the background of who's collecting the information. The information is not sold to anybody, but it's an online voting system that you can do a straw poll, and you can have independents register, and you can put up issues like open primaries. You could actually get a ton of people in Arizona to register on those individuals that need to get educated what it means to have an open primary and how this will help our state, help our country, and give a voice to the independents that don't get to be heard in the primaries. Mm-hmm. And so we would love to introduce you guys and make a connection here with your organization. And then let's do a straw poll. Let's send out there to all the people in Arizona that are willing to register and say, yeah, I think this idea of open primaries is a good idea, because it's only the power grabbers that want to keep control. They want to keep us fighting so they can spend more money. And if we have open primaries, you actually can bring down some of the cost of the elections on this.
Yeah,
Paul?
and I would, by the way, I don't know much about the technology, but we do have we have formed a party here. It's called the Arizona Independent Party.
Oh, okay.
But let me tell you why we formed it. I'm the chairman of the party, and I promise you I never had a goal in my life of being the chairman of a party. But today, with independents, if you decide you want to run for statewide office in Arizona, you need 6,000 signatures to run as a Democrat, 6,000 to run as a Republican. You need 45,000 if you want to run as an independent or unaffiliated.
Wow.
The legislature intentionally boxed them out. Now, this allows them the same signature requirements, and they can get the voter list. But our goal is to try to create the right type of technology to get outreach to people who today don't have a voice that could. So I'm very interested in hearing kind of more from them.
And these smartphone apps, think about Uber, what an end run around all that is. Think about Airbnb. This technology, this communication system, these smartphones are running around the blockers, the two major parties and the state legislature, and allow us, we're not breaking any laws when you do a straw poll. Your thoughts on that, John, on a straw poll using technology?
I think it's a great idea. I think any technology or meeting or community or organization that can bring people together to give expression to their voice, I think independents need to be doing that all across the board. My one warning is that sometimes, not all the time, but there is a belief that we can simply make an end run around some of these institutions that are very brittle and unresponsive to the people, like many state legislatures, and that we can use tech to kind of hack the system or simply move around it. I'm not willing to give up on that.
No.
These are people that we pay to do our business.
Yep.
And I think we have to use technology to better position ourselves to reclaim and recontrol our democracy, not just create alternative platforms.
Yeah, and it's important you can use the technology to get their attention, because if you get a umpteen thousand people participating in District 3, which I live in out in Gilbert, and you have that district and you're able to present an open primary before the primary. I call it a primary before the primary. So you list the top two Republicans, top two Democrats, the independent. You have them on a spreadsheet. And now via this technology, you can do a ranked choice vote. You can do any kind of voting you want, and you whittle it down until you, unfortunately, you do have to get a binary, because guess what? Most people vote against somebody. I hate to say it. I wish we could be inspired enough to vote for somebody. But in reality, we're always saying, no, this is the lesser of two evils. I hate to say it that, but unfortunately, that's human nature. But we have to get it down to that. But we have to open it up so that it might be an independent versus somebody else.
I can tell you that the two-party system, the duopoly, it intentionally tries to do that. The whole goal is to go try to sell a base of voters on an extreme point of view, and then just try to convince people in the middle the other side's worse.
And they say the people in the middle say, I have no other choice. And so that we've only got a couple of minutes left here. John, what information, if people want to reach you, how do they get a hold of you?
Just go to openprimaries.org. We need people. We need volunteers. We need activists. We need people all across the country to work on this issue. One of the things we're going to be doing in 2026 is in the 18 states that bar independent voters from voting in primary elections, we're organizing informational pickets on primary day, where people are going to hold signs at the polls saying, I can't vote today. Ask me why. And we're going to film those and get those out on the YouTube and the Hulu all over the country, because one of the things that we're dealing with two things, Rex. One is that independents are 47% of the country, but independents don't even know that.
Yeah. Most
independents think they're the only independent that lives in their town, because the media is all about red and blue, morning, noon, and night.
Yep.
So we need to organize independents to have a sense that they are 47% of the country, and that the political process treats them like second-class citizens.
John, thank you so much.
We have a big year.
We got music coming up here. We got to wrap up the show. Paul, John, thank you so much for being guests on the show. We're going to do this again. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.